Childhood chronic illness, mental health conditions, and behavioral disorders have been on the rise in recent decades. Is diet a part of the problem? Vital Signs host Brendon Fallon interviewed integrative pediatrician Dr. Joel Warsh, who explains how sugar and certain chemicals are affecting children.
What are the warning signs that parents should look for that would tell them that the food their child is eating is affecting their behavior, for one, or their health?
Well, I would say, even just to start, everybody's being affected by your food because you have to be affected by your food. Everything that you eat matters because we're literally built of what we eat. And so you are literally affected by what you eat always, right? And I think that the easiest way to look at that is kind of those immediate effects. If you're eating a really sugary food or something with a lot of chemicals in it, then you can notice your child's behavior change. Maybe they're a little bit more erratic. They're not listening as well. They're more fussy. They're having behavioral concerns. So you can have those kind of short-term symptoms that you might notice from those sugary foods right after because they get that sugar spike. But it is affecting us. And if you're giving your kids a lot of sugar, a lot of chemicals, a lot of processed foods, we're seeing it on the long end in terms of chronic conditions, chronic diseases. So yeah, I think that it's so important that we are mindful of everything that we give our kids and be reading the labels, because at the end of the day, we are built of what we eat.
You mentioned sugar there. Everyone is aware that sugar has a lot of problems associated with it. What are signs that the child is suffering from eating too much sugar?
Yeah, so we are eating way too much sugar. That is something that I don't even know if everybody does realize that. I hope that that's becoming more obvious at this point. But the kind of sugar you eat matters, and I think that's the first part of this discussion that's really important, because sugar in of itself is not bad for you. We need sugar. Your brain needs sugar. That's what we all function on. We function on glucose, so that's not bad per se. It's just that we get way too much sugar and not from the best sources. So if you're eating sugar and getting it from fruit, if you're eating honey or maple syrup or coconuts, that is not where my concern is. It's the processed sugar, the high fructose corn syrup, the added sugars. This is really where the concern level is. And so much of our food is packed with this to make it taste better. And I think that is where we should be focusing. And oftentimes if you're having a lot of sugar, you get that sugar spike. And so you see their behavior change really quickly right after they have that food. So they're not able to nap if they're a younger child. They're having behavioral outbursts. They're not listening. They can't focus as well. And these are the things that we're seeing.
And I understand you can also see a sugar spike with certain fruits as well. Depending on what fruit you're talking about and how much sugar is in it. So it wouldn't just be processed sugars that would have this effect.
I don't think it'd be entirely limited to it, but in general, your body can process the natural sugars better, doesn't give you as much of a spike. It's a little bit more of a flat line in terms of that spike. So I don't think we see it as much. And I would always hesitate to stop anybody from eating fruit. I think that's a big, important part of our diet. And the least concerning thing to me at this point is kids eating fruit. So I would focus my attention on minimizing the processed sugar and the added sugars, and I think if we do that, then we'll be just fine.
Apart from sugar, what are the other main offenders that the parents need to be wary of?
I would say, the preservatives, the chemicals in there. So I think we want to be looking at, what is the food in? So is it in plastic? We don't want to get the BPA. We don't want to get the phthalates. If you can look into what it was sprayed in, so the pesticides and chemicals, ideally we're minimizing those. We know the harmful effects of glyphosate and Roundup. So ideally, if we can buy products that aren't sprayed in that, or at least they're checking for it, that's really helpful. A lot of, unfortunately, too many products these days have metals in them. So aluminum, cadmium, arsenic, and we talked about that a little bit last time, but these things can be in there as well. So you want to ideally buy products that have had metals testing. So these are the things that I mentioned, but at the end of the day, it's not every parent's going to want to be an investigative reporter and to dive into every single food. So to me, it really boils down to looking at the label, reading the label, trying to buy foods with ingredients that you actually know, like apples and pecans and whatever it is, like real words, not long chemically words. And if you do that, I think you're going to get most of the way.
In terms of reading the label, are there specific things that should flag an alarm when parents are looking at that?
For me, when I'm looking at a label, I'm flagging an alarm if I'm seeing a lot of added sugar, which we just mentioned, dyes. So I would not want to buy any food with artificial dyes. We know that that's affecting their behavior and their hormones. So I wouldn't buy a product with that. I would not buy a product with a chemical. I don't know what it is. So I'm always looking for ingredients to which I can actually pronounce and know what they are. So those are the big ones for me. I think that when I'm looking at a label, I'm just looking at what are the ingredients? Do I know what they are? Does it say organic? Does it say genetically modified? I think these are the big words to start with, and then you can kind of dive in deeper if you want to.
Dye is something I've heard come up before, particularly red dye for some reason, and this triggering certain behavioral problems in children. What is the problem with dye? What kind of effect is happening there?
Well, I think the big overarching issue is, why do we need them? I mean, they put them in there, of course, because they want it to be more colorful and they want people to buy their products, but there's no nutritional value to these things. A lot of them, well, they're all made in a lab and they're synthetic, artificial products, and the research shows that it affects your behavior, it affects your mood. Certainly for kids with neurodevelopmental concerns and hyperactivity concerns, it has significant effects on them. So it affects your mood, your cognition, your ability to focus. And that's been documented over and over again in the research. And there's a lot of push to get these out of food because a lot of other countries don't allow it, but we still do. And a lot of products like Kellogg cereal, for example, I've been working and helping Vani Hari, who's the food babe, to try to get those products out of the Kellogg cereal. I'm actually going to Battle Creek to petition them to take it out. And they don't use it in other countries because it's not allowed. Just in America, it's allowed. We get the worst, crappier products because nobody's pushing them to stop doing it, even though the research is pretty clear that it causes issues. And even if we're not 100% sure, obviously, if you use like beets and turmeric and pomegranate, that's going to have a lower risk to you than red dye number 40 or blue dye number whatever. Like, why do we need those things?
Meanwhile, amid the protests against Kellogg's use of artificial dyes, the company said recently in a statement that their products and their ingredients are compliant with all applicable relevant laws and regulations, and that they're committed to transparently labeling their ingredients. They also said more than 85% of their cereal sales contain no colors from artificial sources.